Hi everyone, welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. Well, it's been another long time since we last published a video. It's not for lack of trying. Actually, I've started, I want to say, 3 different videos, and for various reasons I haven't been able to either complete them and/or I've not been happy with them, and so I've not actually published them. But today, what I wanted to do was kind of redo one of them, which is working on the brakes and basically getting the brakes set up properly. Now, obviously the tractor's not running yet. It's not, we're not going to actually be able to road test it or anything like that, but we're going to try and get it as close as we can. Essentially like a bench test, essentially. Now, way back when we first worked on the brakes, if you have watched that video, or if you go back and watch it, you'll see that we kind of just put it all back together. We didn't go into a lot of detail, and we didn't really set them up. We set them up kind of, but it wasn't right, and we knew it wasn't right, and we knew we were going to have to come back to them. A number of weeks ago, I came back and started videoing, removing everything again and trying to get them all set up. But like I say, I wasn't really happy with the video itself. It was too much delay, too much. It just took a long time to get everything off, get everything set up. So today, what I want to do, I've kind of got. I think I've got everything ready. I've got everything off on the one side, and essentially, what I want to do is just run through how to reinstall the brakes, having done a complete recondition. Right. So what that means is, if you just need to change your brake pads, go ahead, change your brake pads. It's relatively easy and straightforward, and part of this video will cover, what you need. But every now and again, really what you should do is you should strip down everything, right? To remove all the bits, and I'll show you as we go through. Remove everything, loosen everything, and then set it up from scratch again. Now, typically, you would do this perhaps once a year, maybe, it depends how much you use the tractor, maybe once every 2 years, something along those lines. In fact, the manual does talk about, I think it's every 10, I'll check what the manual says, and I'll mention it in the video itself. I can't remember exactly now, but it does say every 10 or so times, I think, you should be stripping it right down and setting things up from scratch. So essentially that's what we're going to do. I want to try and step through that. I want to try and keep the video, it's not going to be short, unfortunately, because there is quite a bit to do and a lot to talk about, but I also don't want it to be too elongated. So I'm going to try and keep a bit of a pace on the video. Of course, I will do some editing as well to make sure that that we keep the pace up. But anyway, look, that's today's video. I hope that you're going to enjoy it. I really do hope that it will be useful for some of you as well. And yeah, well, let's just get into it and see how we go. Okay, so look, we're over here on the right hand side of the tractor. As you can see, you've got pretty much everything stripped off, even to the point of loosening the big nuts at the back so that the pivot points are loose as well. On this side you can't quite see, but the guard for the adjuster also, that's loose. You can hear that clicking. And you can see that I've also removed the guard pins. There's two at the top and 2 at the bottom. Remove them completely. We're going to put those back first. And essentially that is one of the things that often gets neglected, shall we call it, when setting up the brakes properly. The idea and the job of those guide pins is to keep the shoe running parallel to essentially your axle flange, which means they'll be running parallel to the drum surface as well. You can see here we've got our floating cam, which is essentially on the end of the cross shaft, and that is loose. I mean, it's that can move, and that's ready to go. Yeah, so look, that's basically it. Now, one thing we need to talk about very quickly, on drum brakes you have what's called a primary shoe and a secondary shoe. Some call it a leading shoe and a trailing shoe. Now, I hope I've got this right. What I've been able to work out on this setup is that the shoe at the top will be the primary or the leading shoe, and the shoe at the bottom will be the secondary or the trailing shoe. I hope I've got that right, but that's my understanding of all the reading that I've been doing. So, and the idea here is that the wheel is essentially, when you're traveling forward, the wheel is traveling this way. And so this shoe, when you apply the brake, it will push up against the drum, and the force of that movement, the movement of the drum moving forward, or the wheel moving forward, basically accentuates or it's not accelerates, but it multiplies the braking force. It's called the servo effect, apparently, because the shoe is wanting to resist that forward movement, and essentially what you're doing is you're forcing the shoe harder into the drum. Now, the reason why this is important is because you've got two main springs, a spring that sits on here and then goes to that shoe, and a spring on here and it goes to the bottom shoe. And the spring that's on the primary, the leading shoe, needs to be the weaker of the two to allow that shoe to actuate first, or to activate first. And how do you tell which is the weaker spring? Well, normally they're color-coded, they normally have some paint on them, but obviously with the age of this tractor, that paint is no longer. And so what we do is we take a quick look at the two springs, and I hope that you will be able to pick this up on the video, but even if you look at yours, you will notice that one of the springs is made of a slightly lighter gauge wire than the other one. It also has, as you can see, less turns. I think you can see that in the video. And so this will be, the thicker one will be the stronger one. The one with it's got more coils and it's a thicker wire. That'll be your strong one, and this will be your weaker one. So we know that this weaker one needs to go on the top shoe, which is, I believe, the primary. Again, I hope I've got that right. If anybody believes that I've got that the wrong way around, please do comment and let us know, but that's my understanding. Alright, so we're going to get into this. As I said, everything is loose, and the idea here is you get everything installed, get everything set up, and then you tighten everything. And what that does is it just allows all these bits to center themselves and get themselves in the right position based on the whole setup once it's all in place, and we'll step through that. So right, we're going to get going now. I'm going to get these guide pins put back in. That I won't film that, they're basically just screwing. There's a lock nut that goes on the back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw them pretty much all the way in. We're going to get the shoes on and get everything set up, and then we'll bring those guide pins back out to where they're just touching, and we'll make sure that those shoes, the surface of the shoes, is effectively perpendicular to the face of this flange, your main drive flange, because that is what the drum is actually. That's what determines the what's the word I'm looking for? The position or the attitude, let's call it, of the drum once it's bolted on. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get going. Okay, so you can see I've got the guide pins in. You won't see the bottom ones, but they're in as well. Now, on this setup, the brake pad, the brake shoes are identical. So there is you don't need to worry about which one goes where. They are essentially identical. On some vehicles, obviously you'll have the leading shoe might be a bit smaller than the trailing shoe, etc., etc. But on these, they're essentially the same. So look, this one obviously goes on there, and well, not obviously, but it does. That locates on there, and I'll show you. You'll see better when I do the top one, of course. But there is a retaining bolt here that has a large washer that goes on, and then a locking nut. Now this is essentially it's a bit like your nylon locking nuts that you buy today, but it's obviously an original one. I don't know exactly how they make it locking because there's no nylon on there, but it is definitely a locking nut, and you can feel that as you put it on So we'll just put that on loosely. I mean, we can actually go on a bit more than that actually, but you again, nothing. You don't tighten anything just yet. Right. So now the next job is to get the adjuster in. Now this is your adjuster. Again, I talked a little bit about this in the previous video when we were doing the brakes. This has been serviced. You know, I've loosened everything up. So and greased it, so that is now essentially ready to go in. And that obviously, now this flange that you see here, hopefully you can see that flange runs inside the guard at the back. I'll bring the camera around in a second and show you what that looks like, but essentially that goes in there, and that needs to locate on the top of that shoe that we just put on. Essentially like that. And now we can bring the other shoe in, and that essentially, or that goes on like that as well, and the adjuster's just fallen off, so I'll put that back on, get that back in its place. And this is the thing, initially there's a lot of loose pieces kind of that you have to control and manhandle, but slowly you'll see it will start to come together and we will get this all sorted. But essentially that's the setup there. We'll just put that washer and nut on there just to hold that in place. Actually no, sorry, we won't, because what we do want to do is start to get our springs in place. So now this one, as I said, is the weaker one that goes on there like that, and we've got to get it down and around there. But before we do that, there is a locking plate that goes on here as well. So this is your locking plate. It's just basically a piece of flat bar that orients these two pivot points and keeps them nice and strong and at the right place. There are two, or a washer on that go on each of those, and these washers are quite a tight fit, but they do go on. Just have to encourage them a little bit. And I may have to just tap it. Give me a second. There we go. Like I say, it's a bit of a tight fit, but it's don't be alarmed by that. I guess it's designed that way so that they don't come flying off when you take the springs off. There we go. Okay, now, as I said, this this spring needs to come around this pivot point, and then the other one obviously goes on there as well. So let's get that one done first, because you can see that. I think you can see that best in the frame. So I'm going to use a screwdriver. There are special tools you can use for this, but I use the screwdriver method. Kind of tried and tested, I suppose. Do make sure that you've got glasses on, preferably safety glasses, when you're doing this, in case the spring does fly off. There we go. Right, so that one's on. And now what we need is this washer and this lock nut to stop it pulling off. So we'll get that on. Okay, And we'll get the bottom spring on now, which again is the stronger one. So we'll get that hooked in there and get this. There we go. A couple of sparks flying there, but that is now essentially in. Okay, our adjuster is still not in the right position. That's not holding anything yet. And of course we've also got this tension spring, which is this one at the back, sorry, this little one here, and that essentially goes at the back just to pull these two pads up against and keep them on the adjuster. So we'll get that. I need a smaller screwdriver for that. We'll just get that one in quickly. A lot easier, this one. It's not as strong a spring. There we go. And that's its job, is to literally just to keep these two pads on the adjuster essentially. And that one has missed. Now what I mean here, let me bring the camera around this side so you can see what I'm doing on this side now. Okay, you're on the other side of me now. I can't actually see what you can see, but anyway, hopefully you can. Now this adjuster is not actually on the shoe, right? So I put that spring on, but it's missed, the adjuster's not in the right place. So what we need to do, we'll try and do it, there we go. you can pull that, because this, like I said, the spring is not massively strong, and so you can actually manipulate this, and the same with the bottom one, in order to get it in the right place. But essentially that adjuster needs to be on the shoe down here. That flange, this flange on the adjuster needs to be in between these two essentially wire guards, and then the top similarly needs to go into that groove on the adjuster like that. And now you can see that is sitting a lot better. I mean, these are not lined up yet. You see we've still got a lot of movement here, and the same here. And again, this is what these, well, first of all, what these nuts will do, they'll bring those back, but the adjusters that we put in at the start, they allow us to slightly alter the attitude of the pads, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So for now, what we're going to do is tighten up these two just to bring these shoes back. We're not going to make them massively tight, just enough to hold these straight. Okay, now these are 9/16 socket or spanner. So we'll just take those off. Okay, that's relatively straight again. We're going to adjust that in a second, so we don't want to go too far. Just do the bottom on quickly. That seems to be about as far as it wants to go. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get set up now to show you how to align these. So let me get that set up and then I'll come back. Okay, so look, I hope you can see this. What I've got is a straight edge which is bolted underneath I've got two nuts, wheel nuts, holding it in place. So it's basically flush with the surface of this flange. And as you can see, it's extending up past the surface of the pad. And the idea here, you need a smallish square And the idea is that you put the square on the surface of the pad up here, and you try to align or to gauge how this is sitting in terms of this edge of the square in relation to the edge of your, essentially your straight edge. Now, I can see that this shoe needs to go back for some more in order to align. Now, we're going to do it one time on this side of the shoe and then one time on this side of the shoe. Hopefully they'll be relatively similar, but that's why you've got two posts at the back. You can adjust these slightly differently if you need to, but we're not using those posts to adjust it at this point. We're actually just aligning the shoe using this retaining bolt to start with, and we just really want to get it to where it's as close as we can get it at this using this method. So now that looks to me to be, now these two edges are essentially parallel, and so I'm believing that that surface is now perpendicular to this, essentially to this flange. Now what we're going to do, we're going to turn the wheel, or the axle rather, to where that straight edge is kind of over this end now, and we're going to do the same again and just check it on this side to see whether we've got a difference. We're hoping that we don't, but let's see. Now this is a little bit more awkward because of the angle, but okay, so right, so that's definitely not square. What we need on this side, we actually need the shoe to come out a bit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this pillar at the back, get it to where it's touching the shoe, and you'll feel that. Can't show it to you on the video, I'm afraid. There, it's just touching now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, say, half a turn in, and let's check that again. Need some more, so we'll go in a bit more. So I've gone another half turn, and that looks to me now to be just a little bit too far. I'm going to come back a quarter turn. There we go. So I reckon that that's now perpendicular. We're going to recheck the back because of course we've adjusted things now. So we'll do the back again. Okay, and that has definitely moved as well. So we'll bring this pillar in now. Okay, and I'm going to go, I think, a quarter turn on this one, just to there. And we'll check it again. Okay, no, it needs to come out, it's gone too far. Interesting. Can't seem to get this one to line up now, which is annoying. Let's get this one, just check this again. Right, I'm going to take this one back a little bit. Just tighten that up a little bit. Okay, that's better. Let's check this out again. It definitely seems like it needs to go, shoe needs to go back a bit. So we'll take that pillar back slightly and try that again. Okay, that one's now lined up. Let's double check the front. And there we go. Right, that shoe is now set. So what we're going to do now, we're going to gently just make sure that these two pillars are up against the shoe, just touching it, just like that, and then we're going to lock those nuts on the back. We don't want to put any pressure on the shoe. We just want it to be touching so that it's holding the shoe in place. So now we hold the, I know you can't see, well let me bring the camera around, you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So we've got a lock nut and then we've got this the screw pillar, if you see what I mean. So what we want to do is tighten, hang on, let's just finger tighten this first. So we're just going to tighten it up against the back plate. So without allowing the center bolt to move, we're going to tighten this lock nut. Just like that. Now we'll use a bigger screwdriver, I think, so I can be sure that it's not, I don't want it to come loose. So it does need to be reasonably tight. There we go. And then we'll do this one. There we go, that's that one set. Now we do exactly the same on the bottom shoe. Obviously that's a little bit tougher because if you're working at the bottom, but I'm not going to film that because again it's essentially the same process. And so once I've done that I'll come back and we'll continue. Okay. Right, so look, you can see the bottom one, the bottom shoe is now set as well. What I did find, actually I did need to play more with this retaining bolt than the pillars themselves, and I actually went back and redid the top one as well. It's got a lot more to do with this retaining bolt than it does actually the pillars. The pillars you should be setting it purely with this bolt and then bringing the pillars in just to hold it there, as in just to set it. Preferably not to use the pillars as a form of adjustment or a means of adjusting. Anyway, bottom line is they are now as close as I can get them. Look, these are not massively machined or precision machined parts, right? So they're not going to be 100% spot on. I'm getting a little bit of variation between front and back on both sides, both top and bottom. But the variation is consistent, and so I'm reasonably comfortable with that. So look, the next job really is to get this this guard properly positioned. You may not be able to see this on the video, but this guard is now currently touching on this adjuster. And we don't really want that if we can help it, because it's going to mar. You can see already there's some marring on the brass here. So we want to get rid of that, or we want to prevent that. So what we want to do is try and adjust this. And there is a fair amount of or a little bit of adjustment in it. Just make sure that is as loose as I can get it. And you can see there, you can actually move that. Now, what we want to do is pull that away. We don't want it to be touching on this shaft, but we also don't want it to be too far away, because it's got a job to do, right? So, about halfway there, and we'll try and tighten that up and see. Yeah, you see, it just pulls it back in, unfortunately, as soon as you tighten it. I want to see what we can do here. Looks like that's about as close as we're going to get. Okay. So look, unfortunately it's still touching on this center shaft, but the flange is centered. And I think that is, unfortunately, as good as we're going to get it. So we'll tighten that up. Like that. Okay. It's tight, but it's not as tight as it's going to be. As in, we'll give it a final tightening once we got the drum on and got everything set. So look, that's it in terms of the internals, let's call it. The next job now will be to put the drum on and adjust these up, get them better centered. I'll show you how to do that, and then we will go ahead and tighten up these. Pivot points are still loose on the other side here. I think you can just see that here. So they're still loose on the back. The nuts at the back are still loose, and that's because we've got to get everything in and centered, and then we'll tighten those up. Cool. So what we're going to do, I like to put these screws, the cheese head screw holes, perpendicular, so I know where I am when I bring the drum in. So I'm going to zoom you back out a little bit. There you go. And I'm going to bring the drum in and get the drum on. There we go. Okay. So we'll get these screws in just to hold it in place. Now again, these screws do not need to be tight, right? They are literally just to hold the drum in place. Do not tighten them. Just get them up so they're in and they're firm, and that's it. They do not need to be tightened. Right, so there we can see now that is on and the drum is turning freely. There's no resistance from the brakes whatsoever. So we're now going to adjust the brakes, and what we're going to do is we're going to tighten them as tight as we can get them, so that they're pressing right up against the drum as hard as we can. We're going to tap the side of the drum all the way around with a soft mallet, encouraging and enforcing the pads and everything to settle into a good position, so that hopefully everything is as centered as possible. We're going to try and tighten them a little bit more. If they do tighten some more, then we give it another pounding, and we go on until basically you can't tighten them anymore. That will tell you that everything is pretty much centered. At that point, we're going to tighten everything up on the back plate, make sure that everything is tight, and then we're going to back it off. Between 6 and 8 clicks is what they recommend in the manual, and that should be around about the setting that we want. Now, of course, until we've got the wheels on, until the tractor is actually moving, we'll never be absolutely certain, but that's as far as we're going to take it for now. So again, let me get set up, and we'll get this final step done. Okay, so we're at the back now, back of the drum, and you can see here's our adjusting. It's a square nut basically. This is the bolt that, or the nut that tightens that guard, and you can see the 4 guard pins here. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see all of them, but you can see some of them. So what we want to do, like I said, we want to now adjust this up so that the pads are up hard against the drum. Adjusting or turning this essentially forward, as in forward rotation, should tighten the brakes. No, something's gone wrong. That should not take that much adjusting. So I'm going to pop this hub off, the drum, and see what's going on. Okay, stupid thing. I said that it's forward to adjust. It's actually backwards. So what I was doing is I was actually trying to go beyond the limit, which is what all the clicking was. On this side, it's backwards, and you'll hear that's a lot better. It still seems to be clicking a bit, but now we're starting to get some actual friction. And in a minute that should tighten up to where it doesn't want to adjust anymore, like that. I mean, we don't want to go mental, we don't want to force anything, because it is just a brass adjuster, but you can see that that wheel is now, that hub is now firm, and I can't turn it. And so now what we're going to do, we can take, I've got a nice wooden mallet. This is going to be a bit noisy, I'll probably edit the noise out, but basically what we want to do is tap it all the way around the drum to make sure, and basically we need to give it a bit of a shock, because we do want everything to be able to, or if things are not 100% aligned, we want them to align. So we're going to do that quickly. Okay. Now what we want to do is check to see whether it will tighten, whether it will adjust any more. And it did a little bit. We still can't turn the drum, and I don't expect to, but we just give it another couple of taps. And we'll check that again, and that's pretty much a little bit more there, but I think it's pretty much there now. And that's it. So that is now tight. We know that everything should now be centered, and it should be where we want it to be. So now what we do, before we loosen anything, before we do anything else, what we want to do is tighten up these 2 big bolts, the 2 big nuts on the back, which are centering the 2 pivot points, and we will just double check that and these 4 lock nuts as well, and then we'll loosen things off. So just quickly tighten these up. Now these, the nuts at the back of the pivot point, they need to be really tight as you can get them, essentially. There we go. That's that. Check this. Okay. There we go, and that's it. So now what we can do is we can loosen this off again. That's about 3 half turns. So on mine, the click is not working anymore. There is a mechanism there that's meant to click, but this one doesn't really click. So it's difficult to know how many. The manual says 6 to 8 clicks, but, so I'm just estimating it there at about 3 half turns. Now we can't yet actually activate the brakes because the other side is still loose, and if we move the brakes now, then we could the camshaft on the other side could fall out of the holder, which I don't really want that to happen at this point. The final point, well, the final thing to do here at the back, on the back of the cross shaft, you have a washer and a spring that holds it in place. That's really mostly just a dust cover. Put that back, and you should be golden there. And essentially, this side is now done. So that's about it in terms of this video. That's everything that I know and that I've read about setting up the brakes on the Fergie. I don't know, maybe you guys have no other information, maybe you've got better ways of doing it. I've just, as I say, read through the service manual, and then based on my knowledge and my little bit of experience, my little bit of knowledge working on all sorts of different brake systems, that's essentially what I have, how I would do it. I hope that that's useful to somebody. I hope that gives you some pointers. The final adjustment can only be done once the tractor is rolling and in fact running under its own steam. Again, in terms of the manual, what it talks about is putting the tractor in second gear, driving off, and then going hard on the foot pedal and see whether the tractor veers to the left or to the right. Whichever side it veers to, you want to loosen that side off a little bit. Generally, I would go about probably 1 or 2 flats on the square nut at a time until you get it to where when you brake, it stays true. The tractor brakes obviously well, but stays in a straight line. That's what you're looking for. Now these brakes are generally set up for, or we set them up, the way we set them up is we're considering forward motion only. But one of the things about drum brakes is that they work equally as well in reverse as they do in forward. With the one exception being that weaker spring, right? So that weaker spring is obviously lending itself or lending quicker action to forward motion than it would to reverse action, because reverse motion, because when you're going in reverse, basically your other shoe becomes the leading shoe, and that one has the strongest spring on it. But it's enough. There isn't that much of a difference between those two for it to ultimately matter. Generally, you are traveling forward faster than you are traveling backward. Not always the case, but generally speaking. Anyway, bottom line, I just wanted to say was that although we tend to focus on and we tend to concentrate on the forward motion when we're talking about these brakes, they work equally as well in reverse, and they should work equally as well in reverse. If they don't, then you've done something wrong. Anyway, look, that's it for this video. I hope that that's again, I hope that that's useful to somebody. I hope that you enjoyed it if this is your type of thing. And more importantly, I hope that you will join us on the next video, where I think we're going to be getting into the governor mechanism on the engine. I will have to remove the water pump, unfortunately, to do that. I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, putting the water pump on. But that's no biggie. It's just a couple of nuts, and that will be off, and then we can get the governor in, get the governor shaft in, and all of that, of course, is in preparation for getting the carburetor fitted, and eventually, hopefully, getting the engine running, which we're so close now, very, very close. Really starting to get excited about that. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a good week, and hope to see you on the next one. Cheers for now.